Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bad Luck Gamer, and today we got a pretty good archetype to look into. One that I feel is a little underplayed, but it's got a lot of great utility. But first, I do need to mention, recently I attempted to cut my own hair, and it didn't go well. It's not terrible, especially from the front, but if I turn a little bit and you see something looks not right, yeah. I'm not ashamed of learning, and I don't have the money to go and practice on a bunch of like dolls or anything like that. But, you gotta learn somehow, and I learned a lot for sure. Next time, probably will do a lot better, but, gotta grow my hair out first. So I apologize if it just looks weird. Learning a new skill, you know how it is, and doing it in the cheapest way possible by not buying a bunch of wigs. What can I say? Anyway, that silliness aside, today we're going to be talking about the Archaeologist archetype dedication. It is a really good one, but this is definitely going to be one of the first really and purely non-combat based archetypes. Archaeologist is perfect for rounding out your character if you decided you wanted to go with a much more hard combat build for your normal stuff. This will add a lot of flavor and interesting concepts to your character, and Archaeologist can work with literally any archetype or any class, really. It's really, really good, and we're going to get into that here real quick. But I just want everyone to keep in mind that the free archetype dedication rule, I think, can be used to make your character better in all fields of tabletop. Combat, it's got utility, and it's got roleplay, what it can add. And this archetype particularly is very heavy in the utility category, but that makes it perfect for things like a ranger, fighter, monk even, to give them something a little bit more to generally work with. And I overall think it's a really, really good archetype. But let's go ahead and take a look at what it actually offers. So the initial archetype is nothing too special, but it can be really good. It gives you essentially 2 skill increases and a bonus to recall knowledge about people, places of historical or ancient kind of relevance. And if you have to be trained in both society and thievery, these are going to be your 2 biggest skills when you're using the archaeology stuff and the character type in general, because you use society for deciphering writings, for anything relating to, like a settlement. Society is used for a lot of cultural, society, historical based roles. It's really good. Decipher writing, again, really, really important skill. The thievery is actually also very, very important, because one of the aspects of the archaeologist is they have the ability to get around traps easier. Thievery is just very important, and when you take the archetype dedication, you get access to expert in both society and thievery, plus you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to recall knowledge checks about ancient peoples, histories, or cultures. Overall, pretty good. Pretty standard. It works really well, and it's a good foot in the door on the path that your character is going to take. Magical scholastics is pretty good. Really, really good, actually. You get 3 cantrips from 1 feat. That's actually pretty nuts. That's really, really solid. I don't know of any other feats that give you that much. Now, granted, again, these are all non-combat cantrips. You get access to detect magic, detect aura or see aura, read aura, my bad, and guidance. Guidance is arguably combat based because you can use it in combat. What each of these does, detect magic allows you to sense a magical presence in your vicinity. It eventually gets out to like a 60-foot or a 60-foot area. It has to be something within your line of sight though, and you can detect it, and eventually you'll be able to like discern more information from it. It's really, really good. Detect magic is solid, and getting that as an innate cantrip is good. Guidance is overall just really good. It's essentially a +1 to any saves, attack rolls, perception checks, or skill checks. that, you know, you cast it on someone, and I believe for up to a minute, they can opt to use it on a check and get the bonus +1. This is really good in general. This also gives you something you can add to combat as well if you don't have anything you're doing particularly. And I believe, let me double check real quick here, guidance is a single action cantrip. Guidance is really, really good, and that's really solid as a pickup in general from this one feat alone. But Read Aura is also really good because, unlike Detect Magic, this one in particular allows you to know the school of magic objects in your presence. And not only that, but you eventually can detect as many objects as you can perceive in a 30-foot area and detect if they're magical and what their aura or what their school is. And if they're illusion, you can attempt to bypass that. But your cantrip level has to be higher than the spell effect of the illusion. So it's a really good cantrip. I think a lot of people don't understand the really strong aspects of it because Detect Magic does the same thing, only kind of better. This one is really good for identifying, okay, what is in this object? Oh, it has abjuration. And not only that, it's kind of like a minor identify magic item that takes only a minute to cast rather than 10 minutes of exploration activity. And eventually, when you can do it for any number of objects, I mean, that's a lot of effectiveness. It's really, really good overall. And again, because you get these all and they're just in your kit now as innate cantrips, it's a really solid pickup. It might be more niche to have Read Aura, but you have it if you need it. And when you don't need it, you have Detect Magic. And then you have Guidance, which is just good for everything. It's really, really good. Settlement Scholastics is really solid. A settlement in the context of Pathfinder 2E is literally any large, not even large, it can be a small village of 50 people, or it could be a massive metropolis of 1 million people. Those are what are classified as settlements. This feat right here is really good because it makes you an expert in lore checks for that city, which is really good. It means that whenever you make a recall knowledge check about anything involving that city, that's not necessarily uncommon knowledge, you get the difficulty is reduced by 5. And if it's uncommon, it's reduced by 2. It's really good, honestly. And you also learn a commonly spoke language, even if it's an uncommon language. So, for instance, if you got this feat for Geb, the city of the undead, you would pick up Necrol from it, which I believe is an uncommon language, I'm pretty sure. And I think one of the ways, maybe unintended, but one of the ways this feat really is good is you can retrain it. And you can retrain it for the same feat, only with a different settlement. So if you're ever in a new place and you got enough downtime days to retrain the skill and maybe some gold, depending on how your DM runs it, you can pretty much just prep yourself for any area you go to. And lore checks are really good. I even allow my players for certain areas to get a peek at the encounter table because they know the area well enough. And this is really good, even though it's all settlements, and so you're not really going to have much in the way of encounters normally. Not necessarily always, though. So I think this is a really, really good feat. Trap Finder is really solid, and honestly, depending on how your DM likes to run their dungeons, this is really, really good. Nothing gets players beat up more in a dungeon than the traps in Pathfinder 2E. They are intentionally difficult for the players to not only find, but to get around. And this feat here gives you such a strong bonus to get around it. First of all, you get a +1 circumstance bonus to perception checks to find the traps, to your AC if it's an attack trap, or to your saving throw if it's some kind of save-based traps, like poisonous gas, for instance. That's all really, really good, but the clincher is you are considered always searching for traps, even if you're not using the search exploration activity. That's monumental. It allows you to have probably like the recall knowledge or investigate exploration activity when you're in a place, so that you can get those recall knowledge checks for free, essentially, as you're going through a place or in combat. Or at least the first round of combat is what I do, is when the players engage with enemies and see them, if they're taking the investigate, they can make a free recall knowledge check as part of rolling initiative. I think that works really well. But one of the big things about this as well is it allows you to be the trap center for the party, so that you don't have to dedicate someone to it. You're already considered an expert in thievery, and now you're getting a +1 circumstance bonus. The only caveat is you have to have all the requirements that need to be to find the trap. So if it's an invisible trap and you're not keeping up something like detect magic or something like that, you're not going to find it no matter what. So that's something to keep in mind. Good thing they have detect magic. And honestly, if they're using the keep up a spell exploration activity, they can detect magic while they're going through an entire dungeon. And honestly, that could make them just the perfect trap finders. It's solid. And once this also allows you to disable master level traps, which I think are any traps are above like a level 10 or something like that, I'm pretty sure. And if you get master level in thievery, you can disable legendary level traps, and you get a +2 circumstance bonus instead of the +1 I mentioned before, 2 perception checks to your AC and to your saves. Overall, this is a really, really, really good dungeon delving feat in general, and honestly, this is a really solid one to pick up. This is the one I'd recommend you pick up if you have a very dungeon heavy game. Scholastic Identification is a skill feat, so you can pick this up whenever you get a skill feat from your class normally. This is a really solid one. It allows you to make society for all deciphering checks, not just for language-based checks. For instance, if you're attempting to decipher arcana or like arcane runes or like a wizard spellbook, normally you would roll arcana to identify it or to decipher it. This would allow you to still roll your society. Honestly, that's really good. It's a skill feat, so again, this is a really good pickup. If you're already delving down the society line, you must be a master in society to pick this one up. But again, if you're getting master in society, this is probably just going to be on your list of pickups anyway, because this is just a really solid one in general. And there was something else about it as well. Yes, you can use society to identify magic items or magic in a location as long as they are of some historical or cultural relevance. That's super duper niche, and it's not going to come up super often. It's kind of going to be like a once in a campaign kind of thing. It's a good addition onto the prior thing though. And again, if it comes in handy, you're going to feel absolutely amazing because you got the right skill for the right situation. And yeah, there's all kinds of interesting magic items as well that are very culturally relevant the players may get their hands on, and this would allow you to identify all aspects of it as well. This one's really, really good as a skill feat increase, or a skill feat to pick up for your class. Archaeologist's luck. Took me a couple of times. Archaeologist's luck, it just goes down further that trap disarming, trap finding line of feats. This one allows you, if you fail a disable check or if you fail a reflex check, to avoid the effects of failing to disable a trap. This allows you to get a reroll on that to hopefully not get messed up by the negative consequences of. It's definitely a thing. The really good thing about the disable one is if you're disabling like an alarm, a lot of alarm type traps go off if you fail the disable check. This will allow you to reroll that check to hopefully not set the alarm off. It's a really good feat pickup overall. I think it's a little more niche because hopefully you're really, really good at it, but this is not a bad one to pick up if you don't really have anything else planned for the level. Speaking of very niche feats, delay trap is an interesting reaction. So what happens is a trap is triggered within your reach. This is a really good reaction because you can prevent the trap from going off as a reaction. You have to make a thievery check to disable the trap against its DC, and its DC is increased by 5, which is pretty bad, honestly. A lot of traps have very high DCs for their level, so you got to be really, really good with thievery. But if you get the chance, you can avoid setting the trap off immediately. This is a good way to get an ally out of a bad situation, or to get yourself out of a bad situation. And I'm sure that some smart players out there can really find niche ways to use this to their advantage, maybe allowing them to run through a trapped area and then delaying it so that when the enemies go through, they have to go through it. But it's until the end of your next turn, so all the enemies are going to get to move first before it reactivates. It's really hard to use. You'd have to almost like force the enemies into that situation, but I do think that this is a really good reaction if it comes up, but it is incredibly niche. Traps are very often not included in combat situations, and this is good if you have a trap that's activating every turn. Some traps do that. This can give your entire party essentially a full round, or almost a full. It depends on when it goes off, but this can give your party a pretty good amount of time to not worry about the trap setting off. So overall, this is good. It's a pretty niche pick. I'd probably pick this next feat here over it, though, for level 10. And this is Greater Magical Scholastics. You need Magical Scholastics to take this feat in the first place as a requirement. This gives you even more detection-like abilities and some obfuscating kind of abilities. First, let's get into it. You get Locate. It's a great spell. It has a range of 500 feet. It can be a specific object that you've seen before or a specific type of object. This spell will locate the closest one that is to you. This has a lot of good uses, and it's an innate spell that you can cast once per day. So I don't use Locate a lot because I find it's a very niche spell that doesn't come up too often. But having it as an innate spell that you can use once per day is really, really good. That when you need it, you're going to have it, essentially. And honestly, I can't even tell you the number of times I've had players like try to find objects specifically in a game. It just happens in most campaigns. So Locate is a really good spell to pick up with this one alone. But it's got 2 other good spells to add to the list. The next one is Augury. And Augury is a very interesting one. Again, it's not one spell I take a lot with any of my spellcasters because it's a very niche one. Pretty much allows you to ask the DM for a course of action up to 30 minutes into the future if it's going to be good or bad. Essentially, you get wheel, woe, wheel, and woe, or nothing. And technically, when you cast Augury, there is a small percentage chance that it's just a nothing, even if it would be something. So it's kind of niche, but again, because it becomes an innate spell that you can use once per day, this is a really good spell. It's a solid spell to have just in case. It makes sense for an archaeologist to have this. It's like, if I pick that item up, is something bad going to happen? Don't even need to detect the trap. The spell will hopefully do it for you, maybe, or it'll say nothing and then you get impaled by spikes. Either way, it's really solid, and Augury is just a good pickup on this. And again, like before, you get three cantrips before. Now you get 3 spells, all of which have pretty decent levels too, that you can cast these at least once per day. The cantrips, of course, are cantrips. The last one is non-detection, which is really good. You can essentially make an object or a person appear non-magical to any kind of detection, divination, whatever. The spell attempts to counteract it, so I hope you got your counteract rules available. But this is really good if you're trying to sneak in to a secure place, but you want to bring your bag of holding that has all your magical loot. This can allow you to essentially make it so the bag of holding just looks like a normal bag, and you can go about your business. Also, the non-detection spell can only be cast on objects, and it is automatically heightened to the same spell level as your cantrips, which makes this a very hard non-detection to get around. You can't do it on a person, which is unfortunate because that's kind of where non-detection really shines. You can essentially make all the objects on a person appear non-magical. But again, like I said, bag of holding, just drop it in, make it non-magical, and people will be like, oh, okay, that's just a bag, weird bag, okay, and be about their business. It's a really, really good pickup. And overall, these 3 spells are excuse me, are a really solid pickup. For a level 10 feat in general, most archetype dedication feats do not give you this much. So Archaeologist actually has some really strong built-in utility that overall works for your game. And like I said, this is a very high utility-based archetype that can really balance out your characters, make them infinitely more interesting than just a straight-up mercenary, and you can have all kinds of narrative reasons why you're an archaeologist. Maybe you just have a fascination with it. Maybe you're a witch who's trying to get their patron out of their like imprisonment, and they're like an ancient deity who's been leaking out from the seal to you and giving you powers for the sake of releasing them. There's all kinds of really, really cool stuff with this archetype. I think it's a really solid archetype, and overall, I would mark this in like the higher ranks of the archetypes just because it's got a lot of good utility you can use in a lot of places. It's always helpful, and if you have a internal problem of having a character who just doesn't do anything outside of combat, this gives you so much to do outside of combat for your game. This can make your enjoyment of the game better because you have more things you can do while still focusing on the combat aspects for your class-based feats and abilities. This is a really, really solid one. It does take some investment in like society and thievery to get the most out of it, but honestly, if you're just taking athletics anyway, you got some extra skill increases you could spread around. So I think the Archaeologist is a very strong archetype dedication. And with that, that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you all liked it. I think this is a really good archetype. And this is definitely, I think, one of the more solid picks. We're getting close to the end of A, and there's a lot of fun A archetypes left. But we're going to be moving on to B soon, and there's a lot of really solid B archetypes. And yeah, I have been asking if y'all like these videos. I'm kind of getting like a 50-50 split. A lot of people are talking about, you know, they really like having all these videos. They're new, so faster the better. A lot of people say no, keep a good diversity. We do have a solid diversity on the channel already. These videos, I mean, like, I try to do 3 videos a week. Obviously, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes I got set up for a game, for instance, like the Vampire the Masquerade game we're talking about. But, you know, other than that, there will still be another video in the week this week that's not going to be archetype related. So this channel does still have that diversity. And someone made a good point. This is the only channel that's really addressing archetypes in their entirety. So if you have someone who has any question about archetypes, send them this way because this channel is going to keep pumping them out for them. So with that, good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.